The floor buffer hummed its midnight melody as Marcus Chin guided it across the polished marble of Westbrook Academy's East Wing. His reflection ghosted beneath him in the glossy surface, a 45-year-old man in coveralls, pushing machinery worth more than most people's cars across floors that cost more than most people's houses. The Academy's neural sync lighting system tracked his movements, adjusting brightness zones to conserve energy, bathing him in a soft blue glow that made the whole building feel like an aquarium after hours. Through the smart glass windows of Classroom 3B, student achievement holos flickered in standby mode. Marcus slowed the buffer as he passed, letting his gaze find the one face that mattered. Lily Chen, junior year honor roll, her holographic smile frozen mid-laugh in the STEM excellence display. 16 years old and already coding AI subroutines that made his head spin. He touched his wedding ring, the simple tungsten band that had outlasted everything else, including the woman who'd put it there 5 years ago. The buffer hit a stubborn scuff mark. Marcus backed up, applied more pressure. Elena used to tell him he cleaned like he was erasing bad memories. Maybe she'd been right. But some memories wouldn't erase, and some he didn't want to. The apartment smelled like coffee and burnt toast when he keyed in at 6:14 a.m. Lily had beaten him home again, hunched over her ancient laptop at the kitchen table like a fortune teller reading digital tea leaves. Her fingers flew across the haptic keyboard, the soft clicks mixing with the building's morning sounds, pipes groaning, footsteps above, the hiss of the autoclave recycling yesterday's air. "Dad, you smell like industrial citrus again," she said without looking up. Her face was lit blue-white from the screen, shadows under her eyes that said she'd pulled another all-nighter. "It's called Ode to Honest Work." Marcus hung his jacket on the hook by the door, the one that hung crooked no matter how many times he fixed it. Very exclusive. Only available to those who've mopped at least 10,000 square feet before sunrise. "When I launch Study Sync properly, I'm buying you cologne called Doesn't Have to Scrub Toilets Anymore." "And ruin my mysterious janitor mystique?" He ruffled her hair as he passed, felt her lean into his hand the way she had since she was small. "Never," she grinned, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something was chewing at her, he could always tell. But she'd talk when she was ready. That was their deal. The eggs sizzled in the pan while Marcus pulled up the morning newsfeed on their outdated wall screen. Markets up, tensions somewhere always rising, another billionaire launching another vanity satellite. The usual future, arriving right on schedule. He plated breakfast with the precision of a man who'd learned to make small rituals matter. "How's the app coming?" he asked, sliding scrambled eggs onto her plate. "Good. Really good, actually." Her voice carried that tight excitement that meant something big, but she closed the laptop before he could see. "Almost ready for beta testing, your mom would be proud." Lily's smile went soft. Yeah. She would, after she left for school, backpack loaded with tech that cost more than his monthly salary, bought with money she'd earned herself from freelance coding. Marcus allowed himself the morning ritual he never let her see. The bedroom drawer had a biometric lock he'd installed himself, keyed only to his thumbprint. Inside, bank statements glowed on flexible e-paper. The numbers hadn't changed overnight, still sitting at 8.7 million across various accounts. Investment portfolios that updated in real time, and a printed photo of Elena at her startup's IPO celebration, back when they thought they had all the time in the world. Her handwriting on the sticky note had faded, but not the words. "Never let money change who you are. Teach our daughter what matters." Marcus pressed his thumb to the drawer's lock again. It sealed with a magnetic snap. The cafeteria at Westbrook Academy operated on an invisible caste system that no algorithm could map, but every student understood. Lily sat at table 7 with the scholarship kids, Maya Rodriguez, James Park, Aisha Okonkwo, brilliant minds who'd fought their way in through merit while navigating the thousand small humiliations that came with not belonging to the legacy families who treated the school like inherited property. Lily's fingers moved across her laptop's haptic surface, lines of code cascading down the screen. Study Sync was almost ready. The neural adaptive learning algorithms were responding better than she'd hoped, personalizing study patterns with an accuracy that made commercial apps look primitive. She'd already sold a beta version 6 months ago for $60,000 to a small edtech company. They had no idea what they'd bought, that she'd held back the real innovation. The email had arrived yesterday morning, encrypted, routed through 3 proxy servers. Subject line: Acquisition Offer, StudySync. A major corporation wanted the full platform for $2.3 million. Her hands had shaken so badly she'd closed the laptop mid-sentence. She wanted to tell her dad in person. Wanted to see his face when she explained that his daughter, the janitor's kid, had built something worth millions. She'd been planning it for weeks, his 46th birthday next month, the perfect moment. Incoming, Maya muttered. Brittany Ashford materialized like a glitch in reality, all designer bioluminescent threads and attitude. Marcus's niece by marriage, though calling them family felt like claiming kinship with a virus. She held court at Table 1, where the legacy kids rotated through their daily performance of casual cruelty, each trying to outsignal the others in displays of effortless superiority. Today Brittany wore something that probably cost more than Lily's entire wardrobe, her Neuralace makeup shifting patterns across her cheekbones with her mood. She walked past Table 7 with the calculated trajectory of someone who'd studied how to wound. God, it must be so embarrassing having your dad work here, Brittany announced to her entourage, voice pitched loud enough to carry. Like, every time I see a janitor cart, I wonder if it's Uncle Marcus. Does he at least get the good bathrooms? Or is he stuck with the ones near the gym where the athletes don't? Maya said, hand on Lily's arm. Lily's jaw ached from clenching. I'm not. Your dad's worth 10 of her whole family. I know. But the anger still lived in her chest like something with teeth, and someday she'd show them all exactly what a janitor's daughter could build. The memory surfaced without permission, the way trauma always did. 10 years ago, in a hospital that smelled like antiseptic and desperation, Elena Chen had removed her necklace with shaking hands. Platinum and sapphire, delicate as spider silk, with an engraving inside the pendant that read EC Forever in script so small Marcus had needed his reading glasses to see it. This was my grandmother's, Elena had whispered, her voice already starting to fade. Promise me Lily will have it when she's 16, I promise. But the experimental treatments weren't covered by insurance. The bills arrived like a gathering storm, each one larger than the last, and Marcus had watched his wife's chance at survival come down to numbers on screens. He'd donated the necklace to a charity auction, told himself it would have been what Elena wanted, raising money for cancer research. Told himself he'd buy it back someday when he could afford it. She died 2 months later, never knowing what he'd done. He'd told Lily the necklace was lost during the move, and she'd accepted it the way children accept all losses, adding it to the collection of things cancer had taken, but the internet remembered everything. Lily had been researching her mother's company. Trying to feel connected to the woman she barely remembered, when she'd found the charity auction catalog archived on some forgotten server. Lot 47 Vintage Platinum Sapphire Necklace, donated by M. Chen. Sold to V. Chen Ashford for $2,800, Aunt Victoria. Her mother's necklace had been in their family vault for a decade. The fury had been white-hot and clarifying. Lily had contacted the charity organization immediately, used her beta app money to purchase it back legally through their donor repurchase clause. $60,000, more than fair market value, structured as a donation. The papers were filed. The transaction was processing. She'd have it in time for her dad's birthday. Along with the news about StudySync's acquisition offer, one perfect moment to give him back what cancer and poverty had stolen. Victoria Chen Ashford's voice dripped through the phone speaker like expensive perfume, overwhelming and artificial. Marcus, darling. It's been too long. I'm hosting our annual family charity dinner this Saturday. You simply must come. Bring Lily, of course. Marcus held the phone away from his ear slightly, as if proximity made her more dangerous. Victoria, we're pretty busy, nonsense. Family is everything. Besides, I've invited some very influential people. Might be good networking for you. A pause, perfectly timed. You never know who might need a reliable handyman. The dig landed exactly where she'd aimed it. Marcus closed his eyes. What time? 7 sharp. Formal attire. Another pause. I'm sure you have something appropriate. After he hung up, Lily emerged from her room where she'd been obviously listening. Do we have to go? An hour? We show faces, eat overpriced food synthesized to taste like real ingredients, leave, Brittany's going to be there, then we kill her with kindness. Marcus managed a smile. Show her that class isn't bought, it's built. Lily didn't look convinced, but she nodded. She'd been distracted all week, glued to her laptop, checking encrypted messages with an intensity that felt bigger than schoolwork. Marcus wondered if she'd met someone. The thought made his chest tight. She was 16, brilliant, and growing up too fast in a world that would eat her alive if she wasn't careful. He didn't know she was counting down days until she could change both their lives forever. Thursday morning, Brittany Chin-Ashford stayed home with what her mother called exhaustion and everyone else recognized as hangover. Victoria decided to surprise her daughter with a selection of jewelry from their vault, pieces Victoria considered beneath her own taste but suitable for a teenager who needed to learn the difference between statement pieces and everyday wear. Among the items, wrapped in anti-static fiber, a platinum necklace with a sapphire pendant, Brittany recognized it instantly. She'd seen it in an old photo at Uncle Marcus's apartment years ago, during one of those awkward obligatory visits where everyone pretended they were still family. Aunt Elena wearing it, smiling, back when she'd been alive and important and running a startup before cancer reduced her to a cautionary tale about inadequate health insurance. Brittany's fingers found her phone. 30 seconds of searching pulled up the charity auction listing, complete with photos and provenance. Lot 47, donated by M. Chen. So Uncle Marcus had been so desperate, so pathetically broke, that he'd sold his dying wife's jewelry to pay medical bills. The poverty was almost poetic. And now the necklace was hers, bought fairly at auction by her mother who probably didn't even remember where it came from. An idea crystallized, sharp and perfect. She'd wear it to school tomorrow. Let Cousin Lily see it, recognize it if she even knew what her own mother's jewelry looked like. The confrontation would be delicious. Brittany smiled at her reflection, the sapphire catching light against her throat. Sometimes the universe just handed you perfect ammunition. The cafeteria noise hit a frequency that made Lily's teeth ache, hundreds of conversations processed by the school's audio management system. Compressed and equalized so no one voice dominated, creating a bland wash of human sound. She was reviewing code, optimizing an algorithm that identified learning disabilities through pattern recognition, when Maya's hand clamped on her wrist. Don't look. Actually, no, you need to look. Brittany stood 3 tables away, holding court, and around her neck hung a platinum necklace with a sapphire pendant that caught the overhead biolights and threw blue fire. Lily's world narrowed to that single point of light. Her mother's necklace. The one she'd just paid $60,000 to reclaim, still processing through legal channels. The one Brittany had no right to touch. Brittany's laugh carried across the cafeteria. Theatrical and practiced. She was moving now, walking directly toward their table with the focused intent of a missile. The necklace swayed with each step. Oh, this old thing? Brittany's voice pitched loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. Vintage. My mom finds the best pieces at charity auctions. You know, where desperate people sell their family heirlooms to pay medical bills. So tragic, but amazing deals. The fork slipped from Lily's fingers, clattered against her plate. When Brittany leaned over, invading space, dominating territory, Lily saw the engraving inside the pendant. EC forever, where did you get that? Not a question. A statement that came out flat and dangerous. I just told you. Brittany's smile was surgical. Why, do you like it? I'm sure there are knockoffs at Target, if you can afford. That's my mother's necklace. The cafeteria audio system detected the shift, adjusted ambient noise down to capture conflict. Conversations dimmed around them like someone had turned down reality's volume. Brittany's expression shifted to fake sympathy, practiced in mirrors until perfect. Oh honey. If your mom had to sell it, technically it belongs to whoever bought it. That's how capitalism works. She touched the pendant, possessive. Maybe your dad should have worked harder instead of pushing mops. 300 students watched. The moment crystallized. Preserved in dozens of neural lace recordings that would circulate within minutes. Maya grabbed Lily's arm but she shook free, standing slowly. Take it off, or what? Brittany's eyes glittered. You'll have your janitor daddy clean me to death? Lily walked away. She didn't run. Didn't cry. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles and possibilities, the same way she solved coding problems. Every system had vulnerabilities. You just had to find them. The school's security patterns were simple once you understood them. Lily had spent a year observing, not because she'd planned to need the information but because she was her father's daughter. You learned systems by watching how they worked. She knew the cameras had blind spots near the old locker rooms, legacy infrastructure they hadn't upgraded when they'd installed the neural detection grid. She knew Brittany left her gym locker unlocked because privilege made you careless, because when nothing bad had ever happened you stopped believing anything bad could. She knew her father's access codes, the side entrance schedule, the exact 7-minute window when security protocols rotated shifts. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the school had installed new cameras 2 weeks ago, micro-units hidden in the ventilation grills, part of a pilot program nobody had announced, at 10:47 p.m. Lily entered through the side door using credentials that weren't hers but worked anyway. The hallway stretched empty and blue-lit before her, familiar territory transformed by darkness into something foreign. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was stupid. This was theft. This was necessary. Brittany's locker opened on the second try, unlocked, just as expected. Inside, among the designer athletic wear and expensive supplements, the necklace lay coiled on a shelf like a sleeping snake. Lily's fingers trembled as she lifted it, felt the weight her mother had felt, the metal still warm from Brittany's skin. In the ventilation grill above, a camera no larger than a pinhead recorded everything in perfect high-definition detail. The phone call came at 9:17 Saturday morning while Marcus was buttoning his only good shirt for Victoria's dinner. Unknown number. His thumb hovered over the decline button before some instinct made him answer. Mr. Chen? Professional voice, cop voice, the kind that delivered bad news for a living. This is Officer Rodriguez with Westbrook Police. Your daughter Lily has been detained on school grounds for suspicion of grand theft. You need to come to the station immediately. The words arrived in the wrong order, made no sense together. Marcus sat down hard on the bed. There must be some mistake, sir. We have video footage. Please come down to the station. He drove still wearing his work uniform, hadn't changed. Couldn't think, the world tilting sideways around him. The police station materialized through a fog of unreality, all harsh lights and hard surfaces designed to intimidate. Through a window into the processing area, he saw her, Lily. Handcuffed. Tears streaming down her face in a way he hadn't seen since Elena died, since the night he'd had to explain that sometimes doctors couldn't fix everything and money couldn't buy more time. And no, sweetheart, mommy wasn't coming home. Brittany sobbed on Victoria's shoulder, theatrical and loud, her distress performed for an audience of uniforms and officials. Victoria wore something that cost more than most people earned in months, her arm around her daughter. Her expression radiating wounded disappointment. The crowd of onlookers parted as Marcus entered. He felt their eyes cataloging him, the janitor, the poor relation, the man whose daughter turned to theft because poverty made you desperate. Someone whispered. Someone else's Neuralace camera tracked him for social media content. Oh, Marcus. Victoria's voice carried across the room, drenched in false concern. I'm so sorry. I know Lily must be struggling given your circumstances. We'll get her help. I've already called a lawyer who does pro bono work for families in need. Marcus walked past her like she didn't exist, every step measured and deliberate. He'd been moving through spaces owned by rich people for 5 years. Learning to be invisible while seeing everything. Right now, he needed to be very visible. Don't say anything, he told Lily, meeting her eyes. Not a word. Do you understand? She nodded, mascara tracking down her cheeks. A woman emerged from an office, late 30s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Detective Sarah Martinez according to the nameplate on her door. She studied Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read, recognition maybe, or surprise, or something else entirely. Mr. Chen? I'm Detective Martinez. We need to review the security footage with you. This way, please. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and institutional despair. On the screen, black and white footage showed Lily entering through the side door, moving through hallways, opening the locker, taking the necklace. The timestamp read 10:47 p.m. The video quality was perfect, damning, impossible to dispute. Marcus watched his daughter commit a crime and felt his carefully constructed world begin to crack. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and institutional failure. Marcus sat across from Detective Sarah Martinez, watching his daughter commit a felony in high definition on a tablet screen that cost more than his monthly rent. The timestamp glowed in the corner, 10:47 p.m., and there was Lily, moving through corridors she shouldn't be in, opening a locker she had no right to open, taking something that the law would say wasn't hers. His hands shook. Not from shock, he'd known the moment Officer Rodriguez called that something fundamental had broken. But seeing it, watching his brilliant daughter reduced to grainy footage in a police interrogation room, made something in his chest compress until breathing hurt. "That's my wife's necklace," he said, voice barely above a whisper. The words scraped coming out. Sarah leaned forward, pen hovering over her notepad. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind, the eyes of someone who'd seen enough human wreckage to recognize the difference between criminals and people in crisis. "Your wife's, she died 5 years ago. Cancer." Marcus couldn't look away from the screen, from his daughter's pixelated guilt. That necklace was her grandmother's. Platinum and sapphire. "How does my niece have it?" Sarah made notes, her pen scratching against paper in a way that suggested she still preferred analog for important things. "Did Lily know the necklace belonged to her mother?" Marcus's laugh came out broken. "I told her it was lost during the move after Elena died. But Lily's smart. She's always been too smart. She must have figured it out somehow, Mr. Chen." Sarah set down her pen, and something in her tone made Marcus finally meet her eyes. "Brittany Ashford reported this necklace stolen at 7:04 this morning. School doesn't open until 7:30. The earliest she could have gotten to her locker was 7:45, maybe 8. How did she know it was missing before she could have possibly checked?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt the first crack in the certainty that had been drowning him since the phone call. "I don't understand." "Neither do I. Yet." Sarah stood, gathering her tablet. "Let me dig deeper. Something about this doesn't add up." They let him see Lily in a room that was trying very hard not to look like an interrogation space, soft chairs, neutral walls, a table without bolts showing. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, mascara tracking down her face, looking younger than 16 and older than she should ever have to be. "Dad." Her voice cracked on the word. "I'm so sorry. When I saw her wearing Mom's necklace, making fun of us, making fun of you." Marcus crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, felt her shake against his chest the way she hadn't since the night they'd buried Elena. "Shoo. I know, baby. I know, I bought it back." The words came out muffled against his shirt. "Legally. I have all the papers at home. I contacted the charity 3 days ago, Dad. I paid $60,000 for it. It's mine. Victoria had no right to give it to Brittany. I was going to surprise you on your birthday, give you back the one thing cancer took that we could actually get back." Marcus pulled away just far enough to see her face. $60,000? "Lily, where would you get that kind of money?" She met his eyes, and he saw Elena looking back at him, that same fierce intelligence, that same quiet determination that had built a startup from nothing and changed an industry. "Study Sync. My app. It got acquired this week. For $2.3 million, the words arrived in the wrong language. Marcus heard them but couldn't process their meaning, like someone had suddenly started speaking in code his brain refused to decrypt. "The first payment already cleared," Lily continued, words tumbling faster now, desperate. "I used part of it to buy back Mom's necklace through the charity's donor repurchase program. Everything was legal, documented, notarized. I was going to pay off all her medical bills, the ones you're still making payments on even though you think I don't know." I was going to surprise you with the necklace and the bank statements showing zero balance and tell you that Mom's dream, that I could finish what she started. She broke down. Marcus held her, his mind reeling. His daughter was a millionaire. His 16-year-old daughter, who still asked him to check for monsters in her closet when thunderstorms got bad, was worth more than most people would see in a lifetime. And she'd spent her first earnings trying to erase the financial scars cancer had left on their family. Lily Chen, he said quietly, you are the most extraordinary person I have ever known. I'm also a criminal. Her laugh was wet and bitter. Pretty extraordinary at that too, apparently. We'll fix this. I promise you, we'll fix this. He just had no idea how. Sarah Martinez had been a detective for 12 years, long enough to develop instincts that screamed when something smelled wrong. This case stank like week-old fish in a broken refrigerator. Clear video evidence should mean an open and shut case, file the paperwork, move on to the next tragedy. But the timeline bothered her. The early report bothered her. And Marcus Chen's face when he'd recognized that necklace bothered her most of all. She'd met him twice before, briefly, at the community center where her son Diego took coding classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Free classes taught by volunteers, mostly college students fulfilling service requirements. But one teacher stood out, the janitor from Westbrook Academy, who spoke to those kids like they were Silicon Valley prodigies instead of scholarship students from the wrong zip codes. Mr. Chen talks like a philosopher, Diego had said once, excited about some algorithm they'd been working on. He makes you feel like maybe being poor doesn't mean being stupid. Sarah had run a background check, occupational hazard, mother's paranoia, take your pick. Clean record. Widower. Modest apartment. No red flags. Just a guy working an honest job and giving back on his own time. Now he sat in her interrogation room, and nothing about him made sense with the story Brittany Ashford was selling. Sarah pulled up the charity organization's contact information and started making calls. At the Ashford mansion, Victoria Chen Ashford stood in her dressing room, examining her reflection with the critical eye of someone who understood that appearance was armor and tonight required full battle dress. The gown cost $18,000, a deep emerald that set off her complexion and suggested old money, even though the Chen side of her family had been decidedly middle class until she'd married into the Ashford fortune. You invited the detective? Richard Ashford appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his tuxedo, looking like every other old money heir who'd never worked a day in his life, handsome, groomed, fundamentally hollow. Detective Martinez. She's well respected in the community. Good optics. Victoria applied lipstick with surgical precision. Makes us look civic-minded. And your brother? Of course I invited Marcus. She met Richard's eyes in the mirror. Keep your enemies closer, darling. Besides, I want everyone to see the contrast. My success versus his choices. Richard shifted uncomfortably. The girl might end up in juvenile detention, then she'll learn that actions have consequences. Victoria's voice went cold in a way that made Richard remember why he'd been slightly afraid of her when they first met. Marcus should have taught her that instead of teaching her to settle for scraps. You're enjoying this. Victoria turned to face him fully. Marcus got the brains, Richard. He got into MIT. He married a tech genius who was building empires while I was still trying to figure out which fork to use at country club dinners. He could have been somebody. Instead, he became a janitor. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Oh Victoria, how's your family? Well, my brother mops floors for a living and apparently raised a thief. He's grieving, for 5 years? Please. He's wallowing. And his daughter just proved that poverty breeds desperation. Victoria returned to her reflection, smoothing invisible wrinkles. Tonight everyone will see what happens when you choose humility over ambition. It's a cautionary tale, really. Very educational. Marcus used money he wasn't supposed to have, routing it through accounts that didn't officially exist, creating a paper trail that would dissolve under scrutiny but would work long enough to post bail. He'd gotten good at financial sleight of hand over 5 years of living a double life, the poor janitor who somehow always made rent on time, who could always afford Lily's school supplies, who'd quietly paid for 3 of her classmates' laptops when their families couldn't, Lily came home with an ankle monitor and a court date, her face blotchy from crying, her hands shaking as she unlocked their apartment door. The place looked smaller after the police station, shabbier, like seeing it through Victoria's eyes instead of their own. I should shower, Lily said to the carpet. We're supposed to be at Aunt Victoria's in 3 hours, we don't have to go. Yes we do. She finally looked at him. And her jaw was set in that stubborn line he knew too well. Elena's jaw, deciding that cancer wouldn't define her even as it consumed her from the inside out. I'm not hiding. I didn't do anything wrong, legally speaking. Legally I own that necklace. The paperwork cleared Thursday. I have the emails, the transaction records, everything. Her voice rose, cracking. She stole from me, Dad. Brittany wore my property to school to humiliate me, and somehow I'm the criminal? Marcus pulled her close again, felt her anger vibrating through her small frame. I know. We'll prove it, but even as he said it, he wondered how. The law saw what it wanted to see, and rich people like Victoria had been bending it to their will since laws were invented. The story spread through Westbrook Academy's social networks like a virus, mutating with each retelling. By Saturday afternoon, Lily Chen had gone from scholarship student to convicted felon in the collective imagination of teenagers who'd never faced real consequences for anything. The messages started arriving on her phone, some sympathetic, most cruel, all intrusive. Heard you got arrested, why would you steal from your own cousin? That's messed up. My mom says scholarship kids shouldn't be allowed at Westbrook if they can't afford to be here legally. Lily turned off her phone and stared at her closet, trying to find something appropriate to wear to her own public execution. The Ashford mansion sprawled across 3 acres of manicured landscape, all smart glass and strategic lighting, designed to showcase wealth without appearing gaudy. Marcus's Honda looked obscene parked between the autonomous Teslas and hydrogen BMWs, like bringing a bicycle to a car show. Lily wore a simple sundress that had cost $30 2 years ago. Marcus wore his only suit, purchased for Elena's funeral, now slightly too large because grief had hollowed him out and he'd never quite filled back in. They stood in the circular driveway, and Marcus watched his daughter's shoulders square with false courage. Ready? He asked. No. Let's go. The entry hall was designed to intimidate, double-height ceilings, abstract sculpture that probably cost more than most people's houses, a holographic chandelier that shifted colors based on the room's biometric readings of stress and emotion. Right now it glowed a smug golden yellow. Victoria appeared at the top of the curved staircase like an actress making an entrance. Her dress probably worth more than Marcus earned in 6 months. Marcus. Darling. You made it. Her voice carried that performative warmth that barely concealed the condescension underneath. And Lily, sweet girl. So brave of you to come, thank you for inviting us. Marcus kept his voice neutral, giving her nothing, of course. Family is everything. Victoria descended, her heels clicking against marble. Now, I've done the seating arrangements. I thought you'd be more comfortable with the younger crowd. You've always been so youthful in your outlook. She led them to the dining room where 24 guests mingled, and Marcus saw the setup immediately. The main table seated 12, Victoria and Richard at the head. The mayor, several Westbrook Academy board members, Detective Martinez looking uncomfortable in a modest dress that probably represented a month's savings. The second table held more donors and administrators, and off to the side, nearly in the corner, the kids' table. 5 settings, currently occupied by Brittany looking smug, and 2 teenage cousins who'd drawn the short straw on family obligations. The insult was surgical in its precision. Marcus was 45 years old, and Victoria had seated him at the children's table. Perfect, he said, voice still neutral. We'll be fine here. Lily's face had gone pale, but she followed him without protest. They sat, and Marcus felt every eye in the room mark the moment. Register the humiliation, file it away for later gossip. Brittany smiled at them sweetly. Hi, Uncle Marcus. Lily. This is going to be such a fun evening. Dinner was 4 courses of pretension, each plate a work of art that prioritized aesthetics over substance, the kind of food that left you hungry but impressed. Marcus ate mechanically, watching Victoria work the room between courses. She was good at this, he had to admit. Every comment calculated, every gesture precise, all of it designed to draw blood without anyone seeing the knife. You know, Mayor Harrison, Victoria's voice carried clearly from the main table, some people still believe in honest work over ambition. There's something almost noble about choosing simplicity. Even when your children pay the price, the mayor made a noncommittal sound into his wine glass. Board member and Pierce leaned in conspiratorially. Victoria, I heard about the incident at school. That must be so difficult for you, Victoria sighed, the sound of someone bearing crosses with grace. Family is complicated, Anne. You give and give, offer help, offer opportunities. But some people are determined to struggle. I've tried to help Marcus, networking, better positions. But he insists on working menial jobs. And now Lily. She trailed off meaningfully, letting silence do the damage. The girl who was arrested, the mayor asked. My niece, yes. Such a shame. Bright girl. Truly. But when you grow up in challenging circumstances, sometimes the temptation to take shortcuts becomes overwhelming. Nature versus nurture, you know. At the kids' table, Lily's fork trembled in her hand. Marcus touched her arm gently. Don't react, don't give her what she wants. Brittany leaned over, voice pitched to Carrie to nearby tables. I just don't understand why she did it. Like, if you're that desperate for jewelry, just ask for help. That's what family's for, right? I would have given her some of my old costume pieces. Marcus felt Lily's arm tense under his hand. He squeezed gently, a reminder, we're bigger than this. But inside, watching Victoria orchestrate his humiliation with the precision of a conductor leading a symphony, he felt something old and cold settling in his chest. This was who his sister had become, someone who'd trade family for social capital, who'd destroy a 16-year-old girl to feel superior. He thought of Elena in the hospital, her hand in his, voice weak but certain. Promise me you won't let my family change you. The Chenashfords think money is love. Prove them wrong, he'd made that promise. Had kept it through 5 years of deliberate poverty, teaching Lily by example instead of lecture. But sitting at the kids' table while Victoria performed her victory lap, Marcus wondered if maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe you couldn't beat people like this with quiet dignity. Maybe sometimes you had to fight. Sarah Martinez sat at the main table and felt increasingly uncomfortable. She'd accepted Victoria's dinner invitation thinking it was a genuine gesture of community building, wealthy families trying to connect with public servants, bridge the gap between the city's haves and have-nots. Instead, she was watching a woman systematically destroy her own brother for the entertainment of people too polite or too complicit to intervene. Detective Martinez had grown up poor. She recognized the particular kind of cruelty that came wrapped in concern, the way rich people could wound you while claiming to help. And she recognized Marcus Chen sitting at that corner table, taking it all with quiet dignity that made her chest ache. More than that, she'd spent the afternoon making phone calls that had turned her initial suspicion into certainty. This whole situation stank, and Victoria Chenashford was at the center of the smell. After dessert, some architectural miracle of spun sugar and molecular gastronomy that tasted like expensive air, Victoria stood, tapping her wine glass with a silver spoon that probably cost more than Sarah's service weapon. Thank you all for coming to our 10th annual charity dinner. Victoria's smile was radiant, practiced, perfect. As you know, the Ashford Foundation has donated over $2 million to various causes. Education for underprivileged children, medical research. The arts, she listed achievements like battle victories, dropped names like bombs. Sarah watched Marcus's face, saw nothing but careful neutrality. I believe deeply in family, Victoria continued. Which is why, despite recent difficulties, I wanted my brother Marcus here tonight. Marcus, would you stand? Marcus stood slowly. Every eye turned to him, the janitor in the too big suit, the poor relation, the cautionary tale. Marcus has chosen a unique path in life. While some chase wealth, he's chosen humility. While some pursue ambition, he's chosen service. There's something beautiful about that, isn't there? The Buddhist monks, the ascetics, those who reject material success for spiritual fulfillment. She was painting him as a noble failure, and the room shifted uncomfortably. Even the rich people recognized this had crossed a line. Of course, such choices have consequences. But that's the beauty of family, we're here to help when those choices catch up to us. Marcus, know that the Ashfords are here for you and Lily, whatever you need. Lawyers, counseling, even job opportunities if you ever decide to aim higher than floor maintenance. The silence was absolute. Sarah felt anger rising in her throat like bile. She stood before she'd consciously decided to move. Mrs. Ashford, if I may. Victoria turned, surprise flashing across her face before settling into pleased anticipation. A detective supporting her? Perfect. Of course, Detective Martinez. Sarah walked to the center of the room, feeling everyone's attention shift. This wasn't procedure. This wasn't protocol. This was a mother who'd watched a good man teach her son to code, who'd seen how Marcus Chin treated kids who society had written off, doing what was right instead of what was smart. I wanted to thank you for inviting me tonight. As a public servant, I don't often get to see how the other half lives. Polite laughter rippled through the room. But I also wanted to address something, since it's been the subtext of this entire evening. The case involving Lily Chen. Victoria's smile didn't falter. Of course. Truth is important. 3 days ago, Lily Chen legally purchased a platinum and sapphire necklace from the Westbrook Charity Foundation for $60,000. She provided full documentation, bank transfers, and legal ownership papers. Sarah let that sink in, watched Victoria's smile finally crack at the edges. The necklace was originally donated to that charity 10 years ago by Marcus Chen to pay for his wife's cancer treatment. Elena Chen. Perhaps you remember her? The room had gone still in a way that suggested everyone had stopped breathing. The charity confirmed that under their donor repurchase clause, Lily had every legal right to buy back the necklace. As of Thursday at 3 p.m., the necklace legally belonged to Lily Chen. The mayor leaned forward. Then why was she arrested? Because on Friday morning, Brittany Ashford wore that necklace to school. The necklace that no longer belonged to your family, Mrs. Ashford. When Lily retrieved her own property from an unlocked locker in a building her father has legal access to, Brittany reported it as theft. Victoria recovered quickly, voice sharp. She broke into school property after hours, but more importantly, Sarah continued, pulling out her phone, I have text messages recovered from Brittany's phone records. Sent to you, Mrs. Ashford, at 10:52 p.m. Friday night. She read from the screen. Quote, it's done. She took the bait. Call the cops in the morning. End quote. Marcus Chen stood in the gleaming corridor of Westbrook Academy's East Wing, watching his reflection fragment across the polished chrome panels that lined the walls. The mop in his hands dripped synthetic cleaning solution onto floors so reflective they doubled the world above them. In this building, everything shimmered, the students, the walls, the future itself, all carefully curated to blind you to what mattered. His daughter was somewhere in this labyrinth of privilege, sitting in a classroom that cost more per square foot than most people's homes. The irony wasn't lost on him. The janitorial uniform he wore, navy blue with his name stitched in yellow thread, had become his armor these past 5 years. People looked through janitors. They spoke freely around them, as if poverty rendered you invisible, or maybe just irrelevant, Mr. Chen. Principal Hartwick's voice carried that particular tone administrators reserved for service staff, polite enough to avoid lawsuits, distant enough to maintain hierarchy. She appeared at the corridor's end. Her heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that suggested both authority and impatience. The science wing needs attention before the gala tonight. Several parents have already arrived for setup, Marcus nodded, keeping his expression neutral. I'll handle it, make sure you do. The Ashford family donated the new wing. They'll be inspecting every detail. She paused, her gaze sharpening. Your daughter is in Mrs. Chen's calculus class, correct? Yes. He offered nothing more. 5 years of this work had taught him that elaboration invited questions he didn't want to answer. Talented girl. Very talented. Hartwick's smile was the kind you'd give a prize show dog. Though I understand finances are Tight, the floor beneath Marcus's feet reflected her face, distorted and wavering. He focused on that version instead of the real one. We manage, of course. She turned to leave, then stopped. The scholarship committee meets next month. I'm sure Lily's application will be competitive. Marcus waited until her footsteps faded before releasing the breath he'd been holding. The scholarship committee. Another humiliation dressed as opportunity. Another reminder that his daughter's brilliance needed institutional approval to be recognized. He pushed the mop bucket down the hallway, the wheels squeaking against the silence. The science wing smelled of money, new paint, fresh carpet. That particular scent of unopened electronics. Through the windows, he could see the setup for tonight's gala. White tents dotted the lawn like expensive mushrooms. Workers in catering uniforms arranged tables that would hold more food than his family ate in a month. And somewhere in that choreographed luxury, his sister would hold court, Victoria Ashford née Chen. Formerly Victoria Chen, back when they'd shared a cramped apartment in San Francisco's Sunset District, back when their parents worked 18-hour days to keep them fed. Now she lived in a house with more bathrooms than their childhood home had rooms. She'd married Richard Ashford, whose family name appeared on buildings across 3 states. And she'd spent the subsequent 20 years ensuring everyone knew she'd transcended her origins. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Lily. Dad, can you pick me up after coding club? Maya's mom can't drive today, he typed back, of course. 5:30, 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Can we afford gas money? The question landed like a punch. His 15-year-old daughter was already calculating poverty into her requests. He looked at the phone, at the cracked screen he'd been meaning to replace for 6 months, at the reflection of the chandelier overhead that probably cost more than a new phone. Don't worry about that, he typed. See you at 5:30. The afternoon passed in the mechanical rhythm of labor. Marcus cleaned classrooms where students discussed their spring break trips to Europa Station and Mars Colony resorts. He emptied trash bins filled with discarded tablets that still worked perfectly fine. He polished mirrors that showed him a 45-year-old man who looked 50, his black hair threaded with premature gray, his MIT sweatshirt hidden beneath the janitor's uniform. At 4 o'clock, the transformation began. The casual facade of the academy dissolved as the gala preparations reached their crescendo. Parents arrived in cars that drove themselves, their clothing embedded with micro-LEDs that shifted color based on their moods or stock portfolios. Marcus could never remember which. He watched from the maintenance room's window as Victoria emerged from a silver vehicle that probably cost more than Elena's entire medical treatment. His sister looked exactly as she always did, perfect. Her hair was styled in that effortless way that took hours and cost hundreds. Her dress probably had a designer name he wouldn't recognize, though he'd become fluent in the language of luxury despite himself. She moved through the crowd like a queen inspecting her subjects, her smile warm for some, merely polite for others. The hierarchy was visible in her body language, in the subtle degrees of attention she offered. Brittany followed her mother, a 16-year-old replica learning the art of controlled disdain. Marcus's niece had inherited Victoria's beauty and Richard's sense of entitlement, a combination that made her particularly dangerous in an environment where both qualities were rewarded. He'd watched her, over the years, perfect the casual cruelty that marked the truly privileged. He'd also watched her target his daughter, Mr. Chen. One of the younger teachers appeared in the doorway, looking apologetic. They need the ballroom floor buffed. Is that something you can handle before the event starts? Marcus checked his watch. 4:15. Lily's coding club ended at 5. I'll get it done. The ballroom was a monument to excess. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the walls. The floor was genuine wood, imported from some earth forest that probably didn't exist anymore. At one end, a stage held a podium where tonight's speakers would extol the virtues of philanthropy while wearing jewelry worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Marcus began the buffing process, the machine's hum drowning out his thoughts. This was meditation, in a way, the repetitive motion, the visible progress, the transformation of dull to gleaming. There was honesty in this work. You applied effort, you saw results. No algorithms, no market fluctuations, no venture capital vultures circling your innovations. They have you doing this? Victoria's voice cut through the machine's noise. Marcus shut it off. His sister stood at the ballroom's entrance, her expression caught between pity and something harder to name. Embarrassment, maybe. Or the discomfort of being reminded that her brother mopped floors in a building that bore her husband's family name. "It's my job," Marcus said, "it doesn't have to be." Victoria stepped into the room, her heels clicking against the floor he'd been buffing. "Richard's firm is always looking for people with your background. MIT graduate, computer science degree. You're wasting yourself here." Marcus returned to the buffer, restarting it without responding. The machine roared back to life. Victoria raised her voice. "I'm trying to help you." He shut it off again. "I don't need help, don't you?" She gestured around the ballroom. "Look at yourself, Marcus. You're cleaning floors when you could be what? Working 80-hour weeks? Missing Lily's childhood like I missed Elena's final months." The words came out harder than he'd intended. He saw Victoria flinch, a crack in her carefully maintained composure. "That's not fair," she said quietly. "No, it's not. But it's true." Marcus gripped the buffer's handles, keeping his hands busy so they wouldn't shake. "I appreciate your concern. But Lily and I are fine, are you?" Victoria's gaze traveled over his uniform, his worn sneakers, the phone with its cracked screen visible in his pocket. "The scholarship committee meeting is next month. I could ensure Lily's application receives favorable consideration." There it was, the offer wrapped in condescension, the help that came with strings. Marcus had learned to recognize these moments, the transactions disguised as family loyalty. "Lily will get in on her own merit," he said. "Of course she will. She's brilliant. But merit isn't always enough in this world, Marcus. You know that." Victoria moved closer, lowering her voice. "Tonight's gala is raising money for the Academy Scholarship Fund. I've been asked to speak. I could mention Lily specifically, as an example of the kind of deserving student we're trying to help. Don't." The word came out flat, final. "Why not? Pride?" Victoria's expression hardened. "Elena died because you didn't have enough money for the treatment she needed. Are you going to let pride stop you from giving Lily every advantage?" The mention of Elena was a violation, a line crossed. Marcus felt the familiar weight settle in his chest, grief mixed with rage mixed with the exhausting necessity of staying calm. He'd become expert at this particular emotional calculus, the constant recalibration required to survive in proximity to people who weaponized your pain. "Elena died because cancer doesn't care about money," Marcus said. "And she made me promise something before she died." "What?" "To raise our daughter with values, not just valuables." He met his sister's gaze directly. "To teach her that who you are matters more than what you have. That success isn't measured in bank accounts or galas or getting your name on buildings." Victoria's laugh was bitter. "How's that working out? Your daughter shops at thrift stores while her cousin wears designer labels. She eats cafeteria food while Brittany has lunch catered. You think Lily doesn't notice? You think she doesn't resent you for choosing principles over providing?" The words found their target. Marcus had wondered the same thing countless times, lying awake in their small apartment, listening to Lily study through the thin walls. He'd questioned every choice, second-guessed every sacrifice. But he'd also seen what Victoria's approach had created, a daughter who measured worth in price tags, who'd learned that people were obstacles or opportunities, never simply people. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that Lily is learning things Brittany never will. Like how to work for what she wants. How to value genuine connection over social climbing. How to measure success by what you create, not what you inherit." Very noble. Victoria's tone sharpened. "But nobility doesn't pay for college. It doesn't open doors. It doesn't." She stopped abruptly, her attention caught by something over Marcus's shoulder. He turned to see Lily standing in the ballroom doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her expression carefully neutral. His daughter had inherited Elena's ability to hide emotion when necessary, a skill that broke his heart every time he witnessed it. Hey, kiddo, Marcus said, forcing lightness into his voice. Coding club ended early, Mrs. Peterson had to leave. Lily's gaze flickered between her father and her aunt, reading the tension in the space between them. Hi, Aunt Victoria, Lily. Victoria's demeanor shifted instantly, warmth flooding her features like someone had flipped a switch. You look lovely. Are you staying for the gala tonight? We weren't planning on it, Marcus said. Oh, but you must. Both of you. Victoria's smile widened. It's a family affair. Richard specifically asked about you. And Brittany would love to see her cousin. Lily's expression suggested this was approximately as likely as Mars developing oxygen-rich atmosphere, but she said nothing. Years of navigating her aunt's particular brand of conditional affection had taught her when silence was strategic. We're not dressed for it, Marcus said. Victoria waved this away. It's semi-formal. What you're wearing is fine. Her gaze traveled over Marcus's uniform with barely concealed distaste. Well, perhaps you could change into something else. But Lily looks perfect. Marcus looked at his daughter. She wore jeans and a faded t-shirt from a coding boot camp she'd attended 2 summers ago. Her sneakers had been repaired with duct tape. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked like exactly what she was, a brilliant 15-year-old who'd learned to make do with less. We really should go, Marcus started. Please, Dad? Lily's voice was quiet. I want to see the science wing. The new quantum computing lab is supposed to be incredible. Marcus heard what she wasn't saying, that she wanted to experience, just once, the world her peers inhabited casually. That she wanted to stand in those gleaming spaces without cleaning them. That she wanted to be a guest, not the janitor's daughter. Settled then, Victoria said, triumph evident in her tone. The gala starts at 7. Come early, say 6:30? That way you can tour the wing before the crowds arrive. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume, her heels clicking away like a countdown timer. Marcus looked at Lily, seeing the hope and apprehension warring in her expression. You don't have to do this, he said. I know. Lily adjusted her backpack. But I want to. Is that okay? Marcus thought about Victoria's offer, her barely veiled pity, the coming evening where he'd watch his daughter navigate a world that simultaneously welcomed and excluded her. He thought about Elena's voice in his head, reminding him that protecting Lily from everything wasn't the same as preparing her for anything. Yeah, he said. It's okay. They went home to their 2-bedroom apartment in a building that had been slated for demolition twice but somehow survived each corporate buyout. The elevator was broken again. It broke monthly with rhythmic consistency, so they climbed 4 flights of stairs while discussing Lily's day. She'd solved a particularly complex algorithm, helped a classmate debug their code, started planning her entry for a national app development competition. What's the app? Marcus asked, unlocking their door. Educational platform. Helps students with learning disabilities customize their study materials. Lily dropped her backpack on the small couch. The interface uses AI to adapt to different learning styles, so kids with dyslexia or ADHD can actually engage with content instead of struggling through one-size-fits-all approaches. Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. That's incredible, Lily. It's just an idea right now. Would need real funding to build it properly. She paused. Diego from Coding Club said his mom knows some investors. She's a detective, so she has connections. Sarah Martinez? Marcus remembered her from parent meetings, sharp, funny, the kind of person who actually listened instead of waiting for her turn to talk. She seems nice. She is. Diego says she might come to the gala tonight. Her husband's family donated something. Lily rummaged through their small closet. Dad, I don't have anything to wear that's not, thrift store labels, hand-me-downs, the practical wardrobe of someone who'd learned early that fashion was a luxury they couldn't afford. Marcus looked at his own options: jeans, khakis, a few button-down shirts Elena had bought him before she got sick. Nothing that screamed wealth. But nothing that screamed poverty either. Invisible clothing for someone who'd learned to disappear. We'll make it work, he said. They did. Lily wore her least faded jeans and a dark blue blouse Marcus had found at a consignment shop 6 months ago. He changed into khakis and a gray button-down, the closest thing to formal he owned. Looking at their reflections in the bathroom mirror, they could pass, not wealthy, but respectable. Not guests of honor, but not intruders either. The walk back to the academy took 20 minutes. They could have taken the autobus, but the weather was pleasant and the fare was better spent elsewhere. Lily talked about her app, her voice animated in a way that reminded Marcus painfully of Elena. His wife had possessed that same quality, the ability to see problems as puzzles waiting to be solved, to view obstacles as opportunities disguised. The academy looked different at night. The building's exterior was illuminated by lights that shifted through a spectrum designed to project wealth and innovation simultaneously. Through the massive windows, Marcus could see the ballroom filling with guests. His sister was visible at the room's center, surrounded by a cluster of admirers. "Ready?" Marcus asked. Lily straightened her shoulders. "Ready." They entered through the main doors, where a greeter with a tablet checked their names against some list Marcus hadn't known they were on. The woman's smile faltered slightly when she saw Marcus, recognition dawning. "Mr. Chen. I didn't realize you'd be attending as a guest tonight." "Family," Marcus said simply. They moved into the ballroom, and Marcus felt the subtle shift in attention. A few heads turned, whispers rippling through the crowd. The janitor, attending the gala. His daughter, the scholarship case. They were curiosities, conversation pieces, evidence of the Academy's commitment to diversity. Richard Ashford appeared first, his smile practiced. "Marcus. Glad you could make it." His handshake was firm, performative. "And Lily. My God, you've grown. Brittany's around here somewhere. She'll be thrilled to see you." This was demonstrably false, but Marcus appreciated the effort. Richard was, in his own way, trying. He lacked Victoria's sharp edges, her need to establish hierarchy in every interaction. He was simply wealthy and somewhat bewildered by the complexity of his own privilege. "The science wing is through there," Richard said, gesturing. "Feel free to explore before dinner starts." The quantum computing lab was everything Lily had imagined, pristine, advanced, filled with equipment most universities couldn't afford. She moved through the space like someone touring a cathedral, her fingers hovering above surfaces she didn't quite dare touch. Marcus followed, watching his daughter's face light up with the kind of joy that justified every humiliation, every moment of biting his tongue, every night he'd lain awake wondering if he was doing this all wrong. "Dad." Lily stood before a quantum processor, its housing gleaming under carefully calibrated lights. "Do you know what I could do with access to something like this? Tell me." "I could run simulations for the app that would take years on a regular computer. I could test learning algorithms across thousands of variables simultaneously. I could actually build something that might change how education works." Her voice caught. "If I went here full-time as a real student, I could use this equipment." Marcus heard the unspoken question. Lily was brilliant enough to deserve it, but brilliance didn't pay tuition. Scholarships helped, but only if you were selected. Only if your name was known. Only if you had someone like Victoria willing to advocate from inside the system. "You will," Marcus said. "Maybe not here, but somewhere. You'll build your app, and it'll be extraordinary because you built it, not because you had access to expensive equipment." Lily turned to face him. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just saying it because we can't afford anything else?" The question hung between them, sharp and necessary. Marcus thought about his sister's offer, about the shortcuts available if he just swallowed his pride. About the email sitting in his personal account, the one he hadn't told anyone about, the one from a venture capital firm interested in buying Elena's old company's technology for an amount that would solve every financial problem he'd ever had. "I believe," Marcus said carefully, "that the best things you'll create will come from necessity, not luxury. That constraints force innovation. That having to fight for something makes you value it differently than if it's just handed to you, like Brittany?" Lily's voice was bitter. "Like Brittany," Marcus confirmed. They returned to the ballroom as dinner was being served. Victoria had arranged for them to sit at her table, a gesture of inclusion that felt more like display. Marcus found himself seated between a tech entrepreneur and a philanthropist, both of whom seemed baffled by his presence until Victoria explained he was her brother. Then they became overly interested. The way people do when they've decided someone is a curiosity worth examining. "So you work here?" the entrepreneur asked. "In what capacity?" "Facilities management," Marcus said. It wasn't technically a lie. Across the table, Brittany was holding court, her voice carrying over the general conversation. She was talking about her upcoming trip to the lunar colonies, about the private quarters her family had reserved, about the view of Earth from the observation deck. Lily ate quietly, her eyes down, her responses monosyllabic when anyone addressed her. Marcus watched his niece perform, watched his daughter withdraw, and felt the familiar rage building in his chest, the anger that came from watching inequality masquerade as natural order. "Lily's developing an app," Victoria announced suddenly, her voice cutting through the table's chatter. "For students with learning disabilities." Very ambitious, all attention swiveled to Lily. Marcus saw his daughter freeze, saw the panic in her eyes as a dozen wealthy strangers focused on her. "That's wonderful," the philanthropist said. "What stage are you in? Do you have funding?" "A development team? It's just an idea," Lily managed. "Oh, everyone has ideas," Brittany said, her tone light but edged with something sharper. "The hard part is execution. That's what Dad always says. Ideas are cheap. Implementation requires resources." The implication was clear. Lily had ideas but lacked the resources to realize them. Brittany had both. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Implementation requires ingenuity," he said, his voice calm. "Resources help, but they're not everything. Some of the most innovative solutions come from people who had to figure out how to do more with less." "Of course," Brittany said, smiling. "But it must be frustrating, having vision without means. Like being hungry at a feast but not allowed to eat." The metaphor landed like a slap. Marcus saw Lily's face flush, saw her hands grip her fork with white-knuckled intensity. He opened his mouth to respond, but movement at the ballroom's entrance distracted him. Detective Sarah Martinez had arrived, and she was looking directly at their table with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read.